Collaboration is the name of the game on this edition of Arts Weekly. Thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Melinda Haines, with the IPFW College of Visual and Performing Arts. Later in the program, we'll hear about the partnerships that contributed to the Fort Wayne Civic Theater's upcoming season. But first, we'll learn the story behind the teamwork that is bringing Carmina, Burana to Fort Wayne. Joining me to talk about this performance partnership is Gibbons-Brown from the Fort Wayne Ballet. Welcome, Karen.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Well, we are thrilled to have you here. You know, here's the big question. What is Carmina Burana?
Carmina Burana, translated, is Songs of Buran. And these songs or poems were written by monks in a monastery, of course, in the 13th century, discovered several centuries later, set to music by Carl Orff, and then the dance came last. In 1959 was the first piece of choreography to these songs by John Butler.
So this has been a pretty popular piece from centuries ago, you know.
Well, the monks had written these songs and poems to help people understand life. There are 3 sections. This is actually one of 3 different works, but the specific ones that you'll see in this particular production are the traditional Carmina Burana choreography, and they are, the first is Spring Love, the second is Profane or Tainted Love, and the third is Courtly Love.
So this performance, this is the kind of thing where people will have heard the music before, but they don't know where they've heard it.
Highly recognizable. Movies, commercials, everywhere. You hear the songs from Carmina Burana, but not necessarily the words. Sometimes you do, but the words are in German, some French, and Latin. So we're actually translating it through movement on stage.
Okay, so I was wondering about that. You know, how will people understand it? But so it's through movement. There's nothing written that people will have to follow along.
No, you don't have to follow along. There's no translation, and I think that the Heartland Chorale is singing it exactly as it was written. I've heard their rehearsal tapes. They're really wonderful. They really are. But the movement actually interprets the words quite clearly.
Well, the Heartland Chamber Chorale is providing the adult voices, I guess,
Right.
And the Fort Wayne Children's Choir is then going to provide the children's voices.
Right.
Why do we need, you know, both in there? What do each of those bring to the piece?
I'm sure Maestro Robert Nance would be able to speak to this more clearly. However, I think that the children's voices add the softer tone, and some of the interpretations of the kinds of love are a little softer, a little more gentle. But I think also the range, the vocal range, is something a little different, and it's really a lovely mix.
And then the dancers, do we have adults and children? We have an age range of dancers as well, is that correct?
Well, I think the youngest dancer is probably 11 or 12, and the oldest dancer is probably close to 50.
Oh. Well, that's terrific. And the dancers, besides interpreting the words, you know, what else are they bringing to the story?
Well, you know, this might touch on another question that you might have. However, Carmina Burana is often done as a choral piece or an orchestral piece. And often when you use dance, it's done as a dance piece and has been re-choreographed over and over in the second part of the 20th century, specific to the choreographer's vision. I think that when you have the whole production, it's pretty magnificent, pretty spectacular. And I think putting all of these pieces together really brings it to life. The energy is unbelievable.
Well, speaking of energy, there must have been a lot of energy going into putting this production together. You know, I understand that it has been in the works to bring this to Fort Wayne for 10 years. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came to be and why it took so long?
Not sure why it took so long completely. Years ago, over 30 years ago, Fort Wayne Ballet did the piece, but historically what we're hearing is that it wasn't done with live voices and live music. That's what our history tells us. The orchestra has played it as well. The Heartland Chamber Chorale has sung it. But to put it all together, remember that logistically it's a challenge in that there are over 100 voices. You have the musicians in the orchestra pit, and then you have about 30 dancers, not on stage, not all at once, but on stage in the production. And dancers need lots of room to interpret the songs through their movement. So logistically, finding a space large enough for all of that was a bit of a challenge. Then the second part of that is, for the ballet, our season in the theater, those dates are set 3 years ahead of time.
I see.
So it just so happened that it was the perfect storm. All of our season openings could be adjusted to the specific date that we already had the Arts United Center. So all 3 of these organizations are opening their season with this particular production.
Wow, that is just a terrific feat for everybody. We are lucky to have that. But, you know, I'm sure each individual organization has been rehearsing their own part for a time, you know, separately. But together, how long have you had to work on this?
Oh, we haven't yet.
Oh,
not yet.
And it's coming up pretty soon.
Right. What we do is the week of the theater, and the theater week, and this is exactly the same way when we do Nutcracker or our spring production with the orchestra or the Philharmonic. We move into the theater on Monday morning, and we have our separate rehearsals on Monday and Tuesday. We come together on Wednesday for the first time, and then have what we call a sneak peek on Thursday, so we're prepared for the opening for the public.
Wow.
And it's magic.
That
it
is
gels.
That's amazing how it always comes together like that. But the 3 professional organizations, you know, they bring that to it, and it's going to be a spectacular production.
That's with the performers. The work behind the scenes has been going on for about 3 years.
Oh, wow.
So that's pretty
Just
typical.
the planning of
right.
getting everything. Well,
Right.
that's terrific. The you have done other partnerships with other organizations in
Yes.
Fort Wayne as well. Can you tell us a little bit about those as well?
Sure.
The traditional Nutcracker every year, that's a big one.
We love to work with other groups. We actually have worked with the Fort Wayne Civic Theater, Youth Theater. In our upcoming season with Nutcracker, we work with the Fort Wayne Philharmonic and the Children's Choir as well. But our newer collaboration is with Fort Wayne Animal Care and Control. And as we have dubbed it, the Muttcracker, we have adoptable animals, specifically dogs in the production. They're shown during the performance. Actually, they're in the Nutcracker, and you can adopt the dogs on site. So we try very hard to help those who have no voices have a voice through the ballet. Then in the spring, we're doing Cinderella, and we're again partnering with the Fort Wayne Philharmonic. And as a performer, a dancer, there's nothing like live music. You can feel it in your body, and I can only imagine what this must be like for the dancers. Having done Carmina many years ago, it's like dancing in surround sound. The orchestra in the pit, the musicians, the vocal behind you, it's really amazing.
Well, that's going to be a great production for everyone to experience, the performers and everybody in the audience. How can people get involved in the Fort Wayne Ballet or any of these organizations, you know, besides being fans? Are there other, you know, ways that people can support the organization?
Absolutely. We rely heavily on volunteers and our community donor base, so we're really grateful for both aspects of that part of our organization. We always need volunteers to help. The statistic is, for every performer you see on stage, it takes about 5 support staff.
Wow.
So that's a tremendous piece of choreography going on behind the scenes as well.
A lot of people in the background making it happen.
Making the magic.
So, if you said you've got about 100 or so performers in Carmina Burana, or was more than that?
More
really?
than that.
More than that. So.
The musicians in the pit, over 100 voices and about 30 dancers.
Oh my gosh.
It's
so there's a lot of people back there making everything happen.
A
too.
large production.
The different kinds of love that you were talking about in this story of Carmina Burana, how is the production split? Does it have actually different segments that will take you through each of those different groups?
Yes. Vocally, there are 3 separate sections, so there's a pause between the sections, but also the costuming is very different. So if you missed it in the blackout, you won't miss it when you see the costumes. And the tones, the voices, the orchestration is very different for each of those sections. Again, the music will be familiar when you hear it. Of course, I've heard that particular piece before. But as far as the choreography, the movement is very different too. Spring Love, as you can imagine, is sprightly. Profane Love, and this is a part of why we've rated it PG. It's not inappropriate, but it is the subject matter.
Right.
And then we have the pure or courtly love, the prince and the princess, so to speak. But there's not a tutu in sight.
Yeah.
A lot of flesh-colored stuff.
Yeah, I saw some of the photos, you know, for the promo, and it's like, that's not a typical, you know, ballet shot. That's going to be very unique.
Not at all.
And at some point, are the different organizations performing by themselves and then sometimes together? Are they always all together?
In the specific production, the dancers go on and off the stage. The children's choir will do the same, but the Heartland Chamber Chorale singers are there for the entire production. And the program is an hour long in its entirety. There is no intermission, which makes it a little different than a typical theater work that you might see a ballet company do or a philharmonic or an orchestra do. So they stand there. They're on stage all the time.
And when is the production?
It's September 21st and 23rd. Friday evening and the Sunday matinee. And we're at the Arts United Center. And we have a central ticketing system now. Arts
terrific!
Tix.
Oh, wonderful! So Arts Tix, how do you get a hold of them to get the tickets?
That phone number is 422-4226. A couple of tutus in there. And the box office is actually housed at the Arts United Center on Main Street.
Terrific! So you can get tickets for this production, or even for anything else.
Any of the arts groups that are performing in that theater, actually, you can get your tickets, season tickets or individual tickets at the box office.
Okay, so terrific. So Friday, September 21st.
Yes.
At 8 p.m.
8 p.m.
And then Sunday the 23rd at
2:30.
2:30 p.m. Okay, Arts United Center. That is terrific. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The people of Fort Wayne are extremely fortunate to experience this unique production. There are many other great shows coming up in the next few weeks in our area as well. Take note of what's listed on our performance calendar, and we'll be right back with Philip Holglazer of the Fort Wayne Civic Theater to discuss their new season and more.